I'm Brett Rundgren. Um, I'm from Southern California, so I'm anywhere between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles. I get that question a lot. You know, my guests come through and they say, "Why did you choose this place to live?" And I go, "Why did you choose this place to come and stay? You know, on your precious vacation days." You know, so that to answer it in one way, it's just a gorgeous place. You know, it's sort of one of the paradises. There's many of them in the world, but this, in my opinion, is one of them. I have a neighbor that lives across the street, like so many um, homeowners here in El Valle. There are vacation homes for them. Some of them are, you know, lavish estates. Some of them are just very nice houses, like the one right across the street. The name of my neighbor is Eric, and he's from the U.S. or Canada. I never asked him that question, but I see him out here about 3 times a year, and he lives in the city. And I said, "Well, why don't you live out here? It's so beautiful." He goes, "Oh, it's too quiet out here for me, and I prefer to just come out here when I want a bit of quiet, you know, for like 2 or 3 days." And for me, um, it's kind of the opposite. I love the city, but only for 2 or 3 days at a time. For me, it gets a little bit overwhelming. And in general, this is a very quiet town. You know, on most nights, things kind of roll up by 8 o'clock at night, definitely by 9 o'clock at night. So if you're planning on going out to dinner, plan on doing that a little earlier rather than later, because you might be disappointed. And which is great, and it's just quiet. I mean, you walk down the street at 9:30 at night, and you're going to be the only person out there on that street, even on the main street up here. It's beautiful if that's what you want, you know. And traffic out here is, even on the busiest days, traffic is really not a problem. You know, there's always parking. You've always got abundance of parking out here, even on the busiest days. It's just not a problem. So, and we don't have a lot of noise and a lot of noisy vehicles and that sort of thing. You kind of have to be able to see this to appreciate it, but there's a bike path running the whole length of the downtown area, and a sidewalk, you know, so it's very safe, you know, to walk and to ride your bike from one end of the business end of town to the other, which is something that you don't have in most towns, including the cities, you know, in Panama. So that's something that's very special and unique about El Valle. I always thought that it'd be great to build a small little hotel and just have that as my retirement, you know, supplement my income, keep me busy, you know, and do something that I love, you know, as one of my favorite passions has always been. I know this might sound kind of strange, but I lived in Santa Monica and Los Angeles on the coastal areas, and there's so many foreigners out there, you know, people from France, people from Germany, people from lots of Brits out there, and they tended to be my friends when I was out there. I don't know, they hold some fascination for me, you know, just getting to know people from other parts of the world, you know, and becoming friends with them and understanding, you know, their history and their background, and of course, if that's what you like, then this has been a paradise for me, because I've had hundreds of guests come through here in just a year and a quarter, and most of them are from Holland or you know, Germany and Austria, France, Croatia, you know, the UK, you name it. I've had guests come here from far and wide, and thankfully for me, most of these places insist that they learn English, you know, as a second language back when they're in high school and all that stuff. So it benefits me because we can speak my language, and we can have very, very deep, meaningful conversations, and that's my favorite thing. Well, I'm nestled up in my perch upstairs. I'm on the second floor, and even up there I've got a loft for my bed. So I have a window up there where I can look out onto the street, and in far and wide, you know, I get the view of the hills, and it's lovely for me. I didn't even put glass in that window because it's like camping, you know, for me, and I really enjoy that. We don't have a bug problem here, surprisingly, you know, because it's the jungle, you know, but we really don't have a bug problem out here. probably even fewer bugs here than I experienced in Southern California. And they're very well known for having very few bugs, right? So that's not an issue. I love that. Downstairs, I've got 3 rooms. I think they're pretty well appointed. I've got a different theme with each one of my rooms. The house is called Casa Morada. That means purple house, you know. People that speak Spanish, they don't have to, you know, search up and down my street if there's any confusion about which is the place that they're, you know, their destination, because they see a purple house and it's like, there's not too many of those in El Valle, let alone Panama. But El Valle in general, my goodness, there are so many hikes here in El Valle. And there's something very unique about this valley in particular, which typically when you think of a valley, you think of rolling hills and then, you know, like a break in the rolling hills where there's pastures and that sort of thing. But then the hills are, you know, actually they're miles, they can go for miles and miles in any direction. But because this is a unique geological situation here, where this is a crater of an ancient volcano, the hills surrounding this are basically the rim of the volcano. So when you look at these hills, they're a lot closer than a hill would be where I come from that is that high in your perspective, you know. Normally, if I looked at a hill that had a peak that high, it would be probably about 10 or 20 miles going in that direction. But these hills are close enough to where you can actually see the definition in the vegetation on the side of those hills. And that's what makes it, I think, sometimes, you know, it's very much like Jurassic Park. You know, I have always thought that. And for hiking, it's absolutely spectacular. You know, you get up on the ridge of these hills, and a lot of times it's a pretty narrow ridge, and you have a pretty steep drop off on both sides. But usually by the time you're up in the ridge, you're above the tree line. And so you get really, really nice views of the valley. And it's, from certain places, you can see both oceans from here. So on a clear day, doesn't happen very often because just the atmosphere. It gets quite windy down here during the dry season. Dry season could just as well have been called the windy season, because it is windy. And when it's windy down here on the floor of the valley, it's super duper windy up there on those ridges. So I tell everybody, it's like, be prepared for that. Be prepared to go down on all fours if you have to. Just stop what you're doing. You're almost always given a little bit of a warning, you know, when there's a strong gust of wind coming through there, and just be prepared for that. I think I read somewhere recently it was about 200 inches that we got here, which is a lot, you know, considering that it doesn't rain all day and all night like it does some places where you might accumulate that amount of annual rainfall. It actually, you know, we usually don't get more than a couple of hours of rain. So you can imagine if you're going to build up 200 inches of rain in one season, and the rainy season is about anywhere between 5 and 7 months. That's a lot of rain concentrated in 2 hours per day of rain. And it doesn't rain every day. So man, when it comes down, it comes down. It's fantastic. I love it. You just got to be prepared for that. You know, people that actually live here and they work here, they're so accustomed to that they duck under an eave somewhere and they just sit and wait it out, you know, and that's just part of their natural routine. And they're not going to pull out their umbrella and try to weather it, you know, most of the times. They're just going to sit down for a little while, and because they know, you know, this too will pass, you know. So I would say this is a very active social community out here in El Valle. The expats, they love pickleball. I still haven't picked up on the pickleball myself, but I intend to do that one of these days. And of course, they like to hike. So that's definitely a social activity. The gringos out here, not just the gringos, the expats, which are mostly gringos, they're involved in taking care of the stray animals out here. Mostly dogs. You don't see too many cats out here. But that's their sort of main charity out here. They feed them. Tomorrow, I'm going to get involved, and we're going to go do a dragnet on all the animals in town that have not been yet spayed or neutered, and we're going to gather them up and take them to Coronado, and they're going to have that procedure done, and then be brought back here. I wouldn't say it's all through that charity. I think a lot of it, the reason why the animals out here, street animals out here, are quite friendly is because they're well fed. You know, you don't, these are not the kind of street dogs that you see in a lot of countries, you know, where they're starving basically and they're desperate. And you can see their ribs and they're just sucked up and they've got, you know, issues with their skin and that sort of thing. No, these animals actually look pretty good and they're very friendly. You very rarely have any kind of aggressive, you know, action from them. So that's the main sort of charitable organization out here. But there's social gatherings as well. In fact, tonight is one. We meet the first Friday of every month at a place called Carlitos in town, and most people like to come out there, and it's you get to know the people pretty quickly. You know that I've invited 2 people to come to our gathering tonight who have never been there before. And I tell them, it's like, this is a great way of, you know, if you're thinking about coming out here, or if you're out here, or if you want to get to know the community out here, if timing works out for you, this is the best way, you know, come down, because these are some great people out here. You know, we don't talk about politics, which is probably the reason why we all get along so well, you know, and it doesn't matter. You know, what we have in common is more important than any differences that we might have. If you have a decent pension, you know, even an average pension, you could still come here to El Valle and live off that quite comfortably, even if you're paying rent per month. You know, there's places in Panama where you could live a lot more cheaply, but like I said, this is paradise. You know, even I think of this as sort of like the Paris of Panama. You know, there's places where you might call that the Riviera of Panama. Maybe something down on the coast. Some of the coastal areas and some of the islands are just spectacular and beautiful. But this place, I love to walk around town, and you know, I never tire of that. Sometimes I'll ride my bike, and but I have a dog now, and she loves to walk, and I love to walk. I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. I like to go up to the area where all the locals live, you know, because those neighborhoods are to me, they're beautiful as well, you know. And these are not people that have a lot of money, like down here on the floor. You know, most of these houses are people that are fairly well off, you know, you would say fairly well off. So these houses, but there's obviously a beauty to that. You know, I love walking through these neighborhoods. I would say this would probably the cost of living here would probably be up above in the 70 percentile, you know, of cost. You know, there's places that probably are even more expensive. You discover where the good deals are, you know, and who's going to walk away from a good deal, you know, who's going to spend more money than they need. You know, I was much more diet conscious when I lived in California. And part of it is because I was able to be, because if you can think it exists and you can get it, right? So ingredients are pretty much, there's nothing that you can't get where I come from. So, and there's not too many places that, you know, can boast that, you know, and definitely Panama is not one of those places. So I've gained about 20 pounds since I've been here, because I've just I haven't really gotten back to that routine, because I know it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to find almond flour, for example, or, you know, the ingredients that allowed me to eat a diet and, you know, sort of walk away from the things that are very enticing, which now I just like, oh, I love mashed potatoes. Let's have some mashed potatoes. I love bread and butter. You know, I love rice and beans and all of these things. And you certainly are not going to be have an issue finding those out here. So there's some things that are a little bit on the more expensive than you would expect them to be, because they don't grow too much of it out here. And there are, as far as produce goes, I'm past the surprise of the fact that in a tropical country like this, where it seems like everything grows in abundance, there are many things that don't grow, because this isn't the ideal climate. You know, I come from Southern California, which is basically desert, you know, in terms of the climate, and not too far from like Mexico climate and the Southwest, where things like tomatoes, avocados, citrus, chilies. Oh my God, I miss my chilies. Um, they don't grow so well out here. You know, avocados they do grow out here, but they're, there's nothing like a good old avocado, and they tend to be rather expensive because they don't put too much focus on them. Um, I would say in general, the my grocery costs out here probably would be about a little bit more than half of what I was paying where I came from. A little bit more than half. But like I said, Southern California tends to be rather expensive, so um, there's definitely a savings here. Yeah, there has to be. Um, the the local people, they're shopping at the same places that I am, and it's a lot harder for them, I'm sure, to be able to afford groceries, than it is for most people that come here from the outside. I haven't had anything, significant or catastrophic, but I did, fall one time when I was pushing a car out of a one of these culverts, a concrete culvert. When the car finally grabbed, I kind of went down and hit my elbow. It wasn't anything major, but it scraped it up bad and burst the bursa sac, if y'all know what that is. And I went in to get a checkup locally here at the local clinic. And, I met with the doctor, and he says, well, just in case, because it's all scraped up as well, we should probably put you on antibiotics, and I'll send you down for x-rays in San Carlos, right? So he sent me down for x-rays, and then 7 days of not just antibiotics, but an injection. 7 days, each day I had to go in there and get another injection, and then come back, and the doctor reviewed the x-rays, and we had one final consultation. The total, $28. Can you believe that? If I thought I was never going to get old and never have serious health issues, then I would say, why would I ever want insurance, or why would I ever need to do that? Because it's very, very inexpensive out here. So obviously, you're going to want to learn Spanish out here. There are so many reasons why you should do that. When I came out here, I didn't know any Spanish, and I still haven't advanced too far from that point. No excuses. I had an excuse when I was building this house. That was a year. It's like, oh, I would love to get into it, but I don't have the time for that. But it's been a year now, so really no more excuses, except for I'm 63 years old. There's an excuse, right? No, I really need to get on that. I learned basically Google Translate is like, it's a life changer. It really, really is. I came out here not speaking Spanish and not knowing anybody, not really knowing whether I was going to be able to pull this thing off because, of these unknown variables. I come from the construction trade, so I knew that I could oversee the building of this place. But getting to know people and overcoming the language barrier, that was something that I wasn't sure of. But between the Google Translate and people helping me with that process, maybe it would have been better had I been just thrown in the deep end and I had to either learn Spanish or sink, right? I'm forever grateful for Google Translate, but you get a lot more respect if you learn the language out here. And why wouldn't you want to? I mean, I've got lots of friends who are local people, and they don't speak English. But why they don't have to speak English? It's not their job to speak English. It's my job to speak Spanish. But we're still good friends to this day. And that's one of the things I love about this small town is I can't, if I walk from one end of this downtown area to the other, I'm going to see at least 3 or 4 people that I've gotten to know over this 2.5 years. But if you ever want to ingratiate yourself to a community and get to know the locals, build a house. I would say that just as well as with the language, if you make a move coming to not just El Valle but Panama or anywhere like this that's that far from where you came from, you should know, and I think most people do, that it's not going to be the same world. You're not in Kansas anymore. All the things that are available to you with a snap of a finger, very likely, they will never be available to you again. So you have to accept that and adjust to that reality. But there's lots of wonderful things out here that were not available to you where you came from. And there is a pretty thriving expat community out here. When I say that, I mean mostly gringo, because that's what the expat community right here is mostly. I would say probably 80% people from the US and some in Canada, and the rest, if that, 20% Europeans. That's as far as I know. So some of them might never show their faces. I might not have met them yet, but I would say, this has been a wonderful experience, the best experience of my life. These are my best years. I never thought I would say that at the age of 63, but these are my best years. And, I got my dog, and yesterday I inherited another dog, so life is good.